one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Join me in a moment of silence. Thank you very much. Please silence your phones and pagers and such. First item is citizens' concerns. Do we have any citizens that have an item they'd like to talk about that is not already on the agenda? Hearing none, I'll ask approval of the agenda. Does anybody like to make a motion?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Motion by Taylor, second by Potabom. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Items 3 through 7 constitute a consent agenda of routine action items to be considered by one motion. Items pass unanimously unless a separate vote is requested by a board member. Item 3, approval of the minutes of the May 22, 2018 meeting. Item 4, approval of claims. Item 5, board administration, approval of notice of property sale resolution parcel ending in 003, also known as 110 South John Street, setting for Tuesday, June 12th at 4:35. Item 6, human resources, approval of memorandum of personnel transactions. Item 7 is secondary roads, consideration of a permit for use of the county right-of-way for an underground utility for Frontier Communications. I will move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by DeWitt, second by Ung to approve consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. We're a little bit wait a minute. Yeah, we're a little bit ahead. Can we go to item 9 for Mr. Taylor, approval of contribution for a splash pad in the city park located in Sloan, Iowa?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. The City of Sloan constructed a splash pad, or is in the process thereof, located in the city park. Total cost of the project is $152,614. As you know, when we looked at the Correctionville pool, there was a $100,000 grant that was standing to have some leveraged money for a city swimming pool, and Woodbury County contributed $10,000 at that time from local option sales tax, and had a request that the county consider doing something along those lines. And so I'd like to move a contribution of $5,000 from unobligated local option sales tax and ask for a second.
Second.
Motion by Taylor, second by Ung. Mr. Butler, how much do we still have? And
we have about $201,000.
Okay.
Unobligated. That counts this year and next year.
We haven't contributed to this at all, have we? Before? Okay. I saw it was a grant from last year from MERT. I was just curious if
any other questions or concerns? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Mr. Gill, is this close enough for the 4:35 public hearing for sale of property? Item 8, we have a set time and a public hearing and sale of property parcels ending in 005 and 004, also known as 414 Front Street and the northerly 10 feet of Lot 8. The public hearing is now open. For those in favor or against, would you like to speak?
Are you selling those two together?
That is Heather? Yes.
Yes. They have to be sold together? I request that they're not.
Yes, sir. Can you come forward? This is what the public hearing is all about. So if you come forward.
Just step up and identify yourself and your address, please.
Kevin Jorgensen, 303 Summit. I own the property next to that. I have no interest in one of the pieces at all.
Which piece did you not want?
I want the piece that's 10 foot. It's just a 10-foot piece. That's all I'm interested in.
Okay.
So what was your name and address?
Kevin Jorgensen, 303 Summit, Pearson.
Do we have any reason to separate these, or do we feel that we need to sell them as a package?
Sir, did you bring up this concern at any point in the past to the
This
board
is
office?
the first I've heard about it. I was notified Saturday.
Okay.
You know, that's not a lot of time to do anything.
Mr. Chair, if we have any comment from Heather.
Whether,
Would you like to speak?
Yes, my husband
you got to come to the microphone and identify yourself.
is very hard of hearing, so I'm going to speak for
Okay,
him.
that's fine.
And he
Wait, and you are?
I am Susan Wilson, 1219 Hackberry Street, Correctionville.
Okay.
And my husband owns property that adjoins both of those.
All three lots.
All those sections.
Three lots.
Yeah. And so he's interested in all of it.
In the package? In the two pieces
Yes,
as one piece?
yes.
So Heather, do we have a breakdown of cost per lot? Minimum bid per lot?
I will add that we have tried to sell these in the past to the Jorgensens as well, 2 years ago. Letters were sent out and I spoke with Mrs. Jorgensen and I never heard back. And so when the Wilsons came to me, you know, they own the piece of property and then they own both of these lots adjoining them. So that's why we set it up for the sale of both, because I had never heard from anyone else.
I think it's a fair request to sell them both separately. So total 116, but I would put the minimum bid be 116 for either of them then.
So at this point, you make the determination to proceed with the sale, but if you want to change the terms of the sale.
Then we have to push it out at a different time. Okay.
Right, you would have to republish. I mean, what's before the board today is to sell them as a package, so you could go forward with that. Or if you want to separate them out, you'd have to publish it in the newspaper, set a new date.
I guess, you know, we can sell them together, and then if these guys want to make a private arrangement after the fact, that's up to them then too.
Those are the options.
That would be my preference, because it seems like doing one over the other is favoring one request, and if that has been notified in the past and not taken advantage of, I think that sounds good.
Any other concerns then, I guess?
Where are we at?
You gotta, if there's any other public hearing concerns, I guess we'd have to see that and then move to close and move forward to sale.
That's right. The public hearing is still open. If you're done hearing, you can ask questions. But if you're done, you can close the public hearing. And then if you want to change that, you can do it by motion at that point. But if you want to proceed with the sale, you're able to do that too, after you close the hearing.
Hearing no other public comment, I'd move that the public hearing be closed.
Second.
Motion by Taylor, second by Raddick, to close the public hearing. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Passes 5-0.
Now accepting bids, huh? Now accepting bids?
If there's, you can ask if the board wants to proceed with the sale, then you proceed with the sale.
Does the board want to proceed with the sale?
Yep.
Okay.
Is that a motion, Mr. Raddick?
I don't think you need a motion.
No, you don't need
On
one.
the agenda, so.
Then, sounds like the consensus is we ask for bids. Do we have any bidders interested in the property at 414 Front Street and the northerly 10 feet of Lot 8?
Well, you gotta come up and.
If you both are going to bid, I need you both up here. The minimum bid is $323. Mrs. Wilson, your bid is $350?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Jorgensen?
400.
400?
5.
500 from the, 600 from Mr. Jorgensen?
700.
700 from the Wilsons? 800 from Mr. Jorgensen?
1,100.
1,100 from the Wilsons? Okay. Oops. Do we have any other bids on the land for 414 Front Street and northerly 10 feet of Lot 8? Going once? Going twice? Sold for $1,100.
I'll move to sell the property to the Wilsons for $1,100.
Second.
Motion by Radig, second by Young, to sell the property for $1,100 to Mr. and Mrs. Wilson. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. We're going to move ahead to item 11. Jeremy Taylor with discussion and action related to the per capita tax assessing and tax rates for the county mental health and debt services funds for FY 2019.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. With the permission of the board, I'd like to give about a 3.5-minute update on some discussions that took place between Sioux, Plymouth, and Woodbury County today that I think relate to this item.
Remember that we have a set time of 4:45 for board administration if you go over.
3.5 minutes.
I'll do my level best. So Woodbury County was able to meet with Sioux and Plymouth County Attorney, Woodbury County's outside legal counsel today to discuss the future from July 1st, 2018 to entry into Rolling Hills July 1st, 2019 in that interim year. There was a very good step that was taken, and that is that Jerry Foxhoven, the director of DHS, reiterated in no uncertain terms that effective July 1st, 2019, meeting stipulated provisions, Woodbury County is a member of Rolling Hills, which I think is a very good and clear statement. So what to do in the interim year was the focus of the discussion today. First and foremost, high-quality mental health services are on the line, but we feel that we need to best protect Woodbury County taxpayers and things like the crisis center. The fact that we have initially levied more than the other two member counties at about $813,000. We discussed that and the discussion centered around the fact that they do not believe that it may be legal, and this is DHS, to levy differently and not have that money go to the region. So that is a concern that if we were to have a different levy, that we would maybe be beholden to give those dollars there, and we believe that that's not in our best interest. The other is that they mentioned ideas of wanting something in return. Like what? The crisis center and the discussion thereof. We said that we have been willing in the past to potentially pay whatever portion that they initially put in the county. They said not only would they want that, they'd want the full assessed price all over again. So not only this, the monies that we put in, initially about 61%, but now 100% of the price. That I think is a bridge too far. So I knew I'd fail at this. That's my 3.5 minutes, and I'll wrap it up right after.
We're at a set time for item 10, Board Administration, public hearing and approval of Amendment 1 to the Woodbury County FY 2018 budget. Mr. Butler.
This is our annual budget amendment we usually do this time of the year. We have a deadline to meet here by the end of the month, so this is our hearing date. The total budget amendment totals $1,627,587. Of that, I did give you a breakdown summary, and then I broke it down by line item. One clarification here on the second item, which is county attorney. There's a new employee that came on after the fact that the county auditor's office always puts in the wages. They usually do that in October, November. So this, after they're put in, they are sent to the department heads to verify the wages for the employees and if they're in the right position. Somehow this was accidentally missed by the county attorney's office, so we're just putting it as a budget amendment. The auditors did do their job by putting it in the proper place, but the item was not approved yet for the budget at that point in time.
Thank you for the clarification, Mr.
What?
Thank you for the clarification,
You're welcome.
Mr. Butler.
Otherwise, the rest of them are pretty, you can go through them, I can answer any questions on them. 86% of the total budget amendment is CIP projects with secondary roads and our purchase of property out there by Correctionville alongside the Little Sioux Park. The rest, after the 86%, 14% goes to various offices. I did break them down by summary and by line item. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Or if any public has any comment, because you're open a public hearing now, and then you can close it and we act on it.
Do we have any comments from the public while we're in the public hearing?
Seeing none, Mr. Chair, I move that the public hearing be closed.
I will second that. Motion by Mr. Taylor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Passes 5-0.
Okay. If there's any questions on the budget amendment, or if there aren't, then we'll go ahead and approve it.
Move the budget amendment be approved.
There's one correction on my memo here. I did have 52,961 to 45 million. That was the reverse, should be 54 million. Transpose the numbers.
I was going to ask you how that was an increase.
It would be a little tough going down 7 million. Actually went up only 6.
You can't make
It is right on the public hearing and everything.
You can't make a typo like that and get away with it.
Right. I caught it, but somebody else caught it too.
Hopefully everyone caught it.
But it is correct on our record of public hearing and our publication.
I will second that motion by Mr. Taylor. Any further questions? All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Resume with item 11. Mr. Taylor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So as I was mentioning before, Woodbury County levied differently from Plymouth and Sioux, about $813,000 more than that. Does not sound like there's a good way for us to protect those additionally levied dollars. And so one of the things that I'll mention upcoming is that it's probably most prudent for Woodbury County to lower the levy in the mental health while raising it on an equal basis in the debt service levy. It still keeps Woodbury County taxpayers with the lowest levy in the last 15 years. It'll still keep taxes low, but it will be a way to protect those dollars without further assurance. We have to make that decision by May 31st.
Correct.
We don't have time to do anything other than that, and to wait on a department decision to see if there could be allowance for doing anything other than that. There are other stipulations that we talked about, one being the Crisis and Stabilization Center that's here in Woodbury County, utilized 92% of the time by Woodbury County residents, and Sioux and Plymouth, as I mentioned before, made known that they would want what I think is probably a bridge too far for this Board of Supervisors in giving up something in our community that serves mental health services. We did get down to some brass tacks of what it is that Woodbury County may agree to re-enter the existing 2080, and we saw some movement toward the end, and that would be the following. a provision about not deviating from the budget materially. So if they set a budget, and we know we have to go forward with a certain amount of both reserves and levy to Rolling Hills, that is something that I think that there was some movement and potential agreement on, that we offered to abstain from votes about other member counties coming in, that the percentage of reserves would be agreed to, and that whatever MOU we came up with would be binding and not subject to amendment. The goal is to meet back or have something reviewed by both of our councils in the next 10 days that would protect our position going forward. And Jerry Foxhoven made it clear that if Sue and Plymouth do not find a home, that they will need to be placed somewhere after this interim year. So those are just some overall comments from that meeting that I think affect this item. I'll take any questions that anyone may have.
Sure, I have a question. What was the reaction or feedback to the levy reduction by May 31st, if that was brought up at your meeting?
So that was something that was advisable, certainly legal to do. I made it clear that there is a reason that we were at our max levy of $30.49 so that we could bring those dollars forward. But again, it'd take a department review, and we have no surety right now that we could protect those dollars from being taken 39% by Plymouth and Sioux for taxes which none of those counties collected. The other thing that is a little bit of a disagreement is there was talk of, we'll sign an MOU as long as it's not binding. Well, we want a binding MOU. That's the whole point of it. We got into rehashing a little bit of the trust issues. There's no need to go into that, but we want something that's binding for them and for us. So
there's no way to do a 1-year 28E?
I think there is.
I mean, to me, that's a lot more binding than MOU.
Right. I absolutely think that there is, but it takes 3 to tango in this, and 2 don't want to. So I think our council made it clear that we have withdrawn from this 2080. We need a new 2080. I agree that would be the best, but we want some sort of binding MOU to re-enter the existing one so that we have some protection there.
Going forward, the crisis center, are Woodbury County residents going to have access to that facility? Absolutely. Or are we going to lose that?
Yes, either way. There's 2 scenarios.
Okay.
So one scenario is that Woodbury County withdraws and Plymouth and Sioux are not able to bring someone else in. And in that case, Sioux River's region no longer exists because you can't be a 2-county region. And so in that scenario, most likely we would pay whatever they put in initially. If they would be able to bring in Lyon or O'Brien, then Sioux Rivers could continue to exist, and they will say that crisis center belongs to us. We want you to pay us $413 per day per person. What I've made clear is that it's not the initial $470,000 of that building. It's the nearly $1 million cost of services. And nothing prohibits Woodbury County from buying another building a mile away, probably a smart business decision, and having our own crisis and stabilization center. Theirs then would not be able to be sustainable within probably 4 months' time. And so now, why would we do that? Well, you have a 2-county entity that may not even exist in the future as a region, and to have them running it with 65% of their budget doesn't make a whole lot of sense, I don't think, to anybody in this community. So,
well, my question is, could they lay claim to it if they wouldn't be a region, so there wouldn't be any possible way for them to do so anyway, right?
Right. I think they will if they can bring in another county. and still meet that minimum 3-county threshold. But again, we'll have to cross that bridge when we come to it.
Is that still going to be a point of contention, or did Foxhoven or legal counsel make clear that the conditions of the 28E don't apply past our withdrawal, as far as the crisis center and taking it?
They believe that the existing 2080, there's a point of contention whether the existing 2080 governs or not. So we would ask, Woodbury County would have a binding MOU to re-enter the existing 2080. If they can bring in another member county, they can certainly lay claim to that crisis and stabilization center. I think it makes no sense for Sioux and Plymouth County, as far as from their taxpayers' perspectives or mental health services. But that would be a decision that they would make. And then we would need to look at it and say, do we really want to pay $413 per day per person for something that we initially contributed the majority of funds, or do we want to just have another building and do it separately?
In region discussions, too, they would not operate the Crisis and Stabilization Center if they were to keep it the same way it is now. Their discussion was that it would no longer have the 23-hour observations, and it would just, I don't think they even planned on having 24-hour staff for the facility. So the potential that if they even kept it, we probably wouldn't even want to utilize that service because it wouldn't be operating the same service that it is now.
Right. I mean, it's a real loss of service unless they're reimbursed by MCO.
The 23 and a half hour, whatever it is, 23-hour service is contingent on the MCOs getting $500,000 in revenue on both regions. Because both regions did budget $500,000 less for their operating costs. Contingent, they're getting this MCO money from Medicare, and right now, we were told November, we were told February, we were told 2 months. They don't even know if they're going to get any money now. So yeah, 23-hour could be in jeopardy if they don't get the money by either region, whoever has it.
Wait a minute, you say by either region?
Both regions budget the same exact amount.
You mean Sioux Rivers and Rolling Hills?
Yes. Because they're both planned on the $500,000. They tried to keep, Rolling Hills tried to keep it the same as Sioux Rivers had. So there is a problem budget-wise that these MCOs don't come through. And that's where I come back to 23 hours. I've been talking, eliminating that. Which would be both regions probably. Okay, I can't afford to keep it open. That service. The Crisis Center will be open. It won't provide a 23-hour service, potentially.
So all three counties have to agree to the MOU, correct?
Right. I would think that that would be the process. It'd have to go before Sioux Rivers board.
I'm just wondering if a 2080 is not going to work, how would an MOU? And if it doesn't, did Foxhoven say anything about?
When I brought up the what if question, it was, well, as soon as we talk about the what ifs, that's almost souring the waters. So June 26th is the next region meeting. I would prefer that, time's wasting in the next week and a half, that the attorneys get together. I think from their perspective, if this is fair, a new 2080 could have all sorts of different things that we wanted, including 2 votes for us to their 1 each. That was a non-starter. So that to them is sort of remaking the whole thing versus what are the minimum provisions that you can have in order to be able to get out and be held harmless with our future desire to go to a different region.
I would say absolutely necessary for any budget amendments in the future in the region. It would have to require a unanimous vote because that's the only way we're going to protect the money we put in. Because there's rumors that they could spend more, ask for the budget amendment, and then we don't get to take home our full 60%. And to the point of this item, the $831,000 that we would be levying, putting in, Well, we would instantly, because it becomes region money, lose $324,000 of it. So we'd be coming back with only $506,000. Well, I'm not going to sit here today and vote to lose $324,000 and just gift it over to a couple counties that we haven't been able to, really agree with or see eye to eye on a region. So I guess maybe that could segue into what our options are on this. I don't know if you want to take that or Dennis, since you guys are on the agenda item, but I'll support option 2, I guess, whoever wants to discuss it.
So there's 3 options, as you mentioned. Good segue. I like how that was playing. So option 1 is just decrease the mental health levy to $22.58 and decrease the revenue by $813,000. So there's a little more. Taxes are already as low as they are, but you lower that a little bit more. Option 2 is that taxes, the levy rate, overall effective rate, correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, is exactly the same as it is right now. You lower the levy by $813,000 in mental health, and you increase the debt service levy by $813,000 by paying off a couple of notes. We did this before, by the way, when Sioux Rivers went way down to $17.58, and I think it was smart. It gave a little bit of stability for taxpayers. Option 3 is the stinky sock in the room, which is give $813,000 of unprotected funds, knowing that you're going to lose 39% of it.
What was the original levy? 33, what was it again?
3049.
3049?
Now, if we do this, sorry. So we would be going down to $22.58. Under this scenario, next year we'll have to go to $37.11 in order to make up for that. Correct? Right now, we were at $30.49 with the hopes that next year we would go to $29.20. Notice that under either scenario, you're at the exact same dollars over 2 years' time once you take it times the population of 102,779. I say this because my worry is that some of our friends and detractors will say, well, you went from $22.58 and then you went to Rolling Hills and went way up to $37.11. Well, you've got to remember that we are also decreasing the debt levy the next year. And so it's going to have the same overall effective tax rate. I'd prefer to do it this way, but we're kind of prohibited by having to lock in at the same rate as the other 2 Sioux Rivers counties. Hope all that made sense.
So essentially, we're going to levy $791 to the debt service levy, an additional $791. Is that correct? $7.91. Pay down. Was it 2 notes?
We'll pay off 1 note. There's one note we can pay off $378,000 each year, so we'll pay it off 2 years early.
It's marginal, but you save interest.
Yes, you're going to save about $10,000, $12,000 worth of interest. Any savings is savings when you come to interest. And we're doing the same thing this year by paying off 2 notes early.
I'm guessing you guys wouldn't let my vote count as 4 and each of yours as 1 before we get to...
Who do you think, you're Plymouth County?
Are you, Marty?
Well, I couldn't believe they wouldn't let you do that. I had to ask.
Yeah.
I mean, that's still my concern is obviously the what if may come true if the MOU doesn't,
Well, legally, we should have to have a 28E according to the law.
that's true.
So I find it odd that they would suggest an MOU at this meeting rather than anything but a 28E, because by Iowa code, we are required to have a 28E for the year.
Did they suggest the MOU or us?
If they had their druthers, I think there's nothing would change. I mean, they don't have any reason to suggest meet us halfway or anything else. They just say that's in effect.
Oh, you mean the old 2080?
Right.
Okay.
Old 2080 is good forever. It's we who are saying, and I think that if there's something that was positive that came out of the meeting, and I think there was, not only is the reiteration that we're July 1st, 2019, they're not here, is the reasonable things. We don't want a huge increase in the budget that's going to affect us going forward. We want the percentage of reserves on a pro rata basis, and you can't change this, binding MOU. I mean, that's basically as minimum as we get it. If we can't get some sort of binding, whether it's a binding MOU or a revised 2080, then I think we really are jeopardizing taxpayer dollars and mental health services. So the Plymouth County Attorney, I'll hand it to him. I think he saw some reasonableness, and I think that they understood these aren't unreasonable things. I mean, we'll even abstain from them bringing in other counties. We don't need to have that discussion. They can do what they like on that.
Was there no counter other than stay with the old one? Are we the only ones putting forward these ideas?
I believe so, because we're the only, these are safeguards for Woodbury, not really for Plymouth or Sioux. I tried to float out there hey, we won't, even weigh in on the process or talk about our experience with the other counties. We don't care about that. That's their business. But they also, in order to be a functioning region, I think it's incumbent upon them as well to come to the table. Otherwise, they're out of compliance as much as we would be.
So a point to be made, though, if we don't have a 2080 agreement, we're not in that region. We don't need to go anymore. I mean, we can levy that, what was it, 3049? And we don't have to give any money to them. We're not in a 2080 agreement with them.
What's Foxhoven say to that? Did he say we have to go back with them for 1 year?
I believe DHS's general position is that Woodbury County, for this interim year, needs to, and Sioux and Plymouth, need to exist as a region. However, I don't think the whole onus is just on us.
Right.
I think we've come to the 50-yard line, and we're hoping, appealing to the better angels of their natures, that they will meet us there. These aren't unreasonable things. We've had our dust-ups, but at the end of the day, there's a greater good. Let's get through this year. Maybe they bring in another county, great. Maybe they don't. They go up north or whatever it is. But
So in a nutshell, this is option 2.
right, thanks for getting us back on center. Option 2 would be to go ahead and lower from 3049 to 2258, just like Sioux and Plymouth, but to take those dollars and increase the debt levy, holding taxpayers harmless, and go from there.
So the debt levy would be the 3711, is that correct?
No, that would be what we would need to levy next year in order to
What would the debt levy
meet
be?
our obligation.
But Jeremy's point to, you're mixing tax rates and per capita. This is all per capita.
Okay,
What the per capita generates tax dollars, then we have to divide that into total tax base.
okay.
We're talking two different things here. You're talking 729 tax rate, I think, but we're talking about per capita here.
Okay, well, I'll just move option B. We've
I'll second it.
discussed a lot of it.
Motion by Radig, second by Taylor to adopt option B.
Or 2, or whatever it is.
Or
Dennis,
2.
will you clarify exactly what they're doing as far as it's just a form, right? You're changing something on the form, that's your...
Right. All I'll do is recertify back to the state, make a correction, taking $813,005 away from the mental health levy, which will automatically reduce the levy there. Then we'll take that 813, add that onto our tax asking for debt service and raise the levy there. And they'll take care of that all down at the Department of Management. Then they'll send us new certification when they send them out to all counties with those new adjusted rates.
So what you're doing is recertifying at
Correct.
those different rates.
Correct. The total tax asking, total rates will all be the same, it's just distribution underneath those totals.
And that's what we have to have done in 2 days.
Yes. So actually tomorrow morning, I will make a telephone call and it'll be taken care of tomorrow morning.
And that's what Plan B does.
Yes. Yes.
Option 2.
Thanks for the clarification of what I moved.
There were no A, B, and C.
Sorry, I thought I heard...
Do you need the motion reworded, Mr. Gill?
No, I know what it is.
Okay. You're going with what they meant?
Yes.
Okay. Again, motion by Radig, second by Taylor. Any further discussion?
I do think it's worth noting, and not to put words in the TRC's mouth, but it sounds like there is a seen reason that Woodbury County is not asking for something unreasonable by some of these different provisions. If that's fair. I don't know. If
Taylor Goodman, Taxpayers Research Council. It's going to be published soon, hopefully, in the Journal. We sent a letter to the editor saying we would prefer a new 2080. So we agree with everything that was said. Can I ask a question on option 2 real quick? Is it public time yet? Are we going to run into an issue next year when we move this money from debt service back to mental health?
No.
No, because you're not shifting back.
Okay.
Right. These are separate little levies. All we're doing is we're going to reduce the debt service by $850,000 this year 20, put it back in the mental health.
Which frees it up to...
There's no guarantee it will go that way, but that's what the intent is.
Okay.
The levies.
We don't know what our debt is going to be for the following year. Who knows?
Well, I'm saving about $12,000 interest when it actually reduced like an extra penny off the debt levy.
Probably very minimal because our tax base, because you have to add the increment in, so we're talking about a $4.8 billion divided by 12,000 is a tenth of a thousandth probably.
Okay.
It's not very much.
Yeah, I don't mean to speak for my board, but I'm pretty sure they would approve of option 2 over 1 or 3. So.
Thank you. Anything further?
Yeah, I have another question. So with the timeline, does the Sioux River's attorney agree with the 10-day necessity as far as, is the MOU going to be hashed out between legal counsel, or are we going to be supplied as a board with one to do with it what we will before
So
the
Sioux
next?
River's attorney was not present, which is interesting,
Right.
and is fine because we would, I think, have an objection, given that the Sioux River's attorney is supposed to represent all of us. Right? Plymouth County attorney, who I'd like to give a nod to, seems like a very reasonable, thoughtful gentleman, understood some of these things, and there will be some back and forth with our legal counsel on these different provisions. What I think is critical for you two gentlemen is that you are obviously on the Sioux Rivers board. Any MOU would need to come before the Sioux Rivers board. June 26th and July 1st, it's not a heck of a lot of time. I'd prefer that if they get something in the next 5 or 10 days, that they call a special meeting, rather than wait till June 26th and find out something was a bridge too far and now what? I mean, we're really bumping up against. So if that is able to be done in the next 5 or 10 days, hopefully I can call a meeting, get this thing taken care of. Did that answer everything?
Was the Sioux Rivers chairman representing Plymouth at your meeting?
Say it again.
Was the Sioux Rivers chairman representing Plymouth at your meeting?
So the Plymouth County chair represented Plymouth.
Okay.
Sioux County chair represented Sioux. And then I represented Woodbury.
All right. Didn't want to go?
We discussed that at length, and I felt, yeah, okay. You're happy with that? No, I did not.
DHS, did they have any representation this afternoon?
No.
Have they spoke at all about what their possible actions would be if a 2080 is not, I mean, I know there's a current 2080 in place. If there's, yeah, if there's no, any sort of agreement made for fiscal year 19, has DHS explained their options, what they could do? And can they step in and kind of arbitrate a 2080 or?
We did not cross that bridge, and nor were we privy to any counsel that they received.
Well, Foxhoven would have been there. I mean, technically, he's from DHS, and was he not the one suggesting an MOU then?
I think, here's DHS's position. It's like school consolidation, right? You don't want to get into that mess. So I think if they had their druthers, we would work this thing out. What happens if we get to the point where there is no binding MOU, there's no revised? I don't know. I don't know if they want to show their hand. I don't know what their next step is. Hopefully we won't have to go there, right? And just get some reasonable provisions, and away we go.
Yeah, otherwise we have 4 or 5 days to get guidance.
That's what scares me the most, because we have a lot of people needing mental health services, and they'll have 4 or 5 days to figure it out too.
But we've already agreed to levy for mental health services next year, so.
Just don't know where or who'll spend it or who'll have control over it.
Well, one thing we've stated from the beginning, we're not going to let people go without services, so.
Is everybody ready to vote? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay.
My one vote's nay.
Mr. Potabom is opposed.
Well, if it was 4, it'd be
tied. That's right. Well, that's why when he said we wanted 2 to there each one, it's, every vote would be tied.
Well, we've always been fair to you, Mr.
Got that, Mr. Gill?
I do.
Item 12, approval of authorization for the chairman to sign memorandum of understanding. Mr. Taylor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So this item is approval of authorization for the chairman to sign a memorandum of understanding. This item came up last week when Supervisor Radig spoke about it, and it places approval authority for utilization of sick leave for care of the family with the sheriff or the sheriff's designee for those who it pertains to in this contract. Now, Auditor Gill brought up some concerns last week, and one of them, maybe I read into, but is thinking every elected official, we don't want a hodgepodge of, or a confederacy of different ways of doing this. So what this does is set in place that in the long run, each elected official can grant such leave. Subject to a final review by the Board of Supervisors if necessary. We have a disparate, geographically separate county in some respects. We did reach out at the suggestion of Auditor Gill to our Human Resources Director and spoke with our legal counsel. Both suggestions were well taken. So I believe this streamlines a process whereby the elected official designated with oversight can grant or deny that sick leave for family care in excess of 120 hours. Spoke to Melissa about this and wanted to get a level of comfort. I think that this is reasonable also in the sense that either party could appeal this. Now, why? Nothing against our sheriff. Let's just say Sheriff Smith in the future says, I'm going to deny this person's, asking for more time. That could be appealed to the Board of Supervisors to have a final say. Conversely, the HR director could come before the Board of Supervisors and say Sheriff Smith is granting excess leave for his care of his wife. He didn't even have a wife. He's working on his house. Whatever the situation, I think it is either a protection for the employee and the employer by doing it this way. So, in conjunction and coordination with legal counsel, there's suggested language here. And with that, those are my opening remarks.
I think before we have a motion or anything on this, we did discuss bringing this up in a closed session before having it in an open session, and there's a concern brought earlier that once it's on the floor in an open session, you can't take it back to a closed session. Is that?
That would be my position.
But, so, I guess.
What was your point there?
That in order to have a closed session on it, we would have to not have it be, you know, moved and seconded here in an open session.
That's why I'm here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
I think it's important to go back to the beginning for the entire board to know how this came about. There was a previous action that you took. It was retroactive. It approved a situation where a person went over on their family sick leave. And when that occurred, I always like when something occurs that we have an error, I always try to go back and figure out why that occurred and what we can do to improve that situation so that it doesn't occur again. When this occurred is that we have a time system, a time card system that the employees sign off on, and the supervisors, not you folks, but their supervisors also have to sign off on that. But when this occurred is because we developed this in-house, the timekeeping system, is that the supervisor who approved that had no way of knowing that that person had already gone over the 120 hours that was allowed for them. And so we had a meeting and said that we could take that to the board and you could approve it retroactively, that you would do that. But also what we did was we contacted the IT department and asked them to put together a block, a warning that would tell those supervisors when that employee has exceeded that and when there is going to be an issue. And so we've been working on that, but some other complications have arisen, and we're still working on that as far as it's a 24-hour and what is it, 24 and 96. Okay, so we're working on that, trying to get that straightened out so that we can deal with this issue in the future. But this was something that occurred, and it hasn't, in all the time that I've been here, it's never occurred before. So it's not something that's, I feel, is real pressing that we need to do at this point. And so we dealt with that issue at that time. And then this MOU appeared, and Melissa asked me if I was aware of it and how it would occur, because they were asking the chairperson to sign that MOU. And I said, no, this is a change in the contract agreement. It is changing the terms of the contract. And so that is not something that the chairperson can do on their own. Your bylaws state, and it's just that way, is that to change the terms of an agreement, all the board has to sign off on that. So that's what we said, and there were some discussions that took place between the chairperson and the union apparently, and the sheriff. I don't know who was all involved in those discussions, but the last I heard at that point was that it wasn't going to proceed because we talked about that, is that it is a change in the terms of the agreement, and that is not something that normally occurs. An MOU is interesting. You were just having a discussion about the MOU and a contract and an amendment to a contract. An MOU does not have the same impact that his contract has. But if all you folks sign off on it, as I've told previous boards, is that if you have 3 votes and it's legal, you can do anything you want. So you can actually change this, change the terms of this contract by your action here tonight if you approve this. I just don't, I really have a philosophical problem with doing that. It's a precedent that you're setting, is that, and it's not necessary. There's no real need for this to occur at this point. There's no pressing matter. It rarely occurs. And it's just something I don't. When you're changing the terms of the agreement, you're giving it to the sheriff. And the sheriff and I have always had this conversation. We talk about the Christmas in Danbury people that are out there. And that's what we talk about, is that, everybody loves Dave. Dave's a fair guy. Everybody loves Dave. But you have the responsibility to protect those folks that are within that bargaining unit, regardless of who the sheriff is at that time. We talk about Christmas in Danbury because Dave was on the wrong end of something at one point, and a previous sheriff said, well, enjoy Christmas in Danbury. That's the assignment that he got at that point. And so that's really what I'm concerned about here. And when you look at the homework, it says that you can do it for the other elected officials too. I don't want that responsibility. And as I talked with Dave about this, what you're doing for this particular change, it doesn't have anything to do with the sheriffing, as we say. It has to do with the benefit package. And that's not something, that's your responsibility. That's not the sheriff's responsibility to determine how those benefits are going to be distributed to his employees. And I don't think it's my responsibility. That's your folks, and you shouldn't give it up. That is, those are benefits. They are not anything to do with my ability to do my job as the auditor, or as Dave's ability to be the sheriff. But, and to be quite honest, I'm not held in the same esteem as Dave, and I don't think my employees would go along with having me make that determination. And so that's what I'm just saying is that I don't think this is, this sets a precedent, and it's not necessary to do it. And Supervisor Taylor said it streamlines it. It doesn't really streamline it, because it puts another step in. It has that employee has to go to the elected official first, and if he doesn't like what he got from that elected official, then he has to go to the Board of Supervisors. Right now, it just goes to the Board of Supervisors. So I don't see where that streamlines it. And it's a responsibility I don't want, that I don't think I should have, and I don't think it's fair that you set up the other bargaining units to have to deal with that same issue. I think that is, it's more appropriate to do that during the collective bargaining process. And I hold the collective bargaining process, that is big to me. I was 18 years old when I sat on the first negotiating committee that I did for the USCW at Hinky Dinky, as far as doing negotiating a contract. And I think that's where it shouldn't have to come from. And I don't know where this came from, but obviously it appears to me, because when I spoke with Dave about this, it appears that the union is the one that wants this, because I don't want it, and I don't know where Dave is, but so if that is something you had, and this is what I asked the chairperson at that time, what did you get in for, in return? What consideration did you get in return for signing this agreement? Because that's what collective bargaining is about, is quid pro quo. You give some and I give some. And this, and I don't see where that's taking place in this process right now. So what I'm asking you to do is just not take any action on this and just let the collective bargaining process work the way that it is designed to work.
Sure. Well, I appreciate Pat's comments. You know, I'd be curious to hear from Dave as another elected official, or PJ, their opinions as well. I know there's a certain school of thought that feels like in an MOU you have to have given something up. I even heard this with the Fallen Heroes thing. Well, that's something that you can, you know, what are you getting in return. Well, sometimes I think that there's ways to empower elected officials. I don't think there's unanimous consent on all elected officials on this issue. And I think the elected official, I think there's some level of trust there, and I don't think it's as big a deal in the sense of granting in a situation 3 or 5 hours or a certain day and having an appeal mechanism back to the board. I think without that, then that oversight isn't there. But I do think it's an easier ask of, this is the situation, to my auditor, to the county attorney, to my sheriff, depending on which department I work in. And if that is objected to by the HR director, that's something that can come before this board. If it's objected to by the employee, it could come before this board. I doubt it ever will. I think for the most part, I think it's been crafted in such a way with consulting legal counsel, certainly within I agree with you, was not within our right for one person to just sign. But I have a philosophical disagreement that sometimes we can't give something or cede something or look at a different process without saying, well, what is the union giving back in order to be able to appeal to an elected official for a day's worth of sick time, given an extraneous or extenuating rather circumstance?
It is open-ended.
What's open-ended?
What you're giving them for that employee.
But it's open-ended just as much in so much as the County Board of Supervisors could grant whatever in excess of 120 days. This simply says that your HR director could come before the board and say, look, this is egregious. This is not even applicable in this situation. And then the board does have that say.
All right. I'm not going to beat a dead horse here, but just telling you is that it's open-ended as far as the elected official, and it's much more credible for 5 members of the Board of Supervisors to consider that rather than one elected official. And it has nothing to do with elected officials performing their duties. It has to do with the benefit package that you grant to those employees. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Dave Drew, Sheriff. It was a memorable Christmas in Danbury, and they've loved me ever since. This issue is brought up because of an employee that exceeded the 120 hours. And we had a meeting. Melissa, Pat, PJ. Yeah. Drawn a blank. Michelle, got it. Sorry, Michelle, takes a minute. I'm trying to think who else was all there. I don't think you were there, Dennis. But we had this meeting and we discussed this. And here's the concern that I have. And on Pat's issue, I see that collective bargaining deal, and I'm not arguing it. I don't know that it's a benefit, but Pat sees it as it is. So he's probably more up to speed on that than I am. Here's what I was looking at. I think the Family Leave Act happened sometime in the 90s, I'm guessing. And the issue we have is our people aren't Monday through Friday. So what happens is maybe this person's wife had a baby, there was complications, they had daycare, and trying to juggle sick kids in daycare and this. So it became difficult, and the 120 were exceeded, and then it was going to be using a personal day instead of that pool of 640 hours of sick time. My thought was, it's all one pool of money that's there, or sick time, who cares? And so if he takes it, because the way I looked at it was we were making honest people liars. You know, you were just going to say sick. Well, maybe you were taking care of your kid or something, but so I just said, hey, I think for the deputies wise, why penalize them and take a vacation day or a comp day when it really is something to do with your family members. So I don't understand all the language stuff, but I was looking out for one of our employees, and the union may have a whole different issue. They may think that maybe that's a tool to bargain with, and I'll respect both sides, just as Pat's was maybe a little different than mine. I don't like, Pat's exactly right. I don't have any skin in the game. I was just looking out for our people, and I thought that that 640 pool hours, the guy should be able to just use that too. I'm not seeing we don't have an abuse of sick time around our place. We manage that. I think the one thing that Pat and I may disagree a little bit on is I do like the idea that the sheriff, he shouldn't be the one that has the say as far as that issue. I believe forever the board has the numbers of how much is going to be in my budget and how many people I have. Other than that, the sheriff should manage that. That's just the way I've always looked at it.
I'm curious, between yourself, Dave, and Pat, is there any disagreement on the statement you made about it's rare, it happened once, it's not foreseeable again in the near future?
As far as the sick time usage?
So you had one instance, it was addressed?
Yeah, I don't, probably in Pat's area, I don't know in my area. I don't think we've had much go over 120, but we do have a younger group of people, and wives, children, sickness. We've had people that have some children that have some issues, and that time runs, and so there's still a bunch of sick time available. So I'm not seeing it as a huge pattern. I think Pat is right. He's also the one that, along with Melissa, sees all the time usage. So,
but okay, so we had a mistake. It's where your office signed for something somebody wasn't entitled to. Right?
Yeah,
Well, no, let me make a point here.
Okay.
So under the current policy, it's supposed to go through essentially HR, is it not? Before it comes to the board. Because we don't sign off on any of that unless it goes outside the policy, which Melissa would let us know as the HR director.
Absolutely. I think
so.
Brought it to us. Yeah.
Really, the way it works now is probably the way it should work. It should go to the HR director informing us, because the way it works now, even if there's a mistake, they catch it. I mean, if she wasn't monitoring it, it never would have been caught, come before the board. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, this does cede some of the approval authority for each time to the elected officials, thinking that they know their people, their personnel, and they have that oversight, without giving all, in the sense that somebody could, as I stated before, still appeal that. So I think, in my opinion, is that it's reasonable to have our elected officials make that determination, subject to Melissa coming before and saying, this is, really outside of, the norm or what scope is setting. So,
I mean, do you have anything to say on it too, Melissa? I mean, out of curiosity,
Melissa Thomas, HR. As Pat has said, this has only come up once since I've been here in the past 6 years that I remember, since I've been in HR for a while. And when it did come up, it seemed like everything worked the way it was supposed to. I mean, the gentleman got his time, and so, and as the HR person, and you brought up FMLA as well, I think you did. I think Human Resources will know when it's appropriate and when it's not appropriate. When the family medical leave is run out, or when they haven't turned in the correct paperwork that they need to for their family medical leave. If they need to go as far as you were saying, the 640 hours, which is actually farther than family medical leave will allow anyway. So it's just one of those, it's tough, because I really think this is going to be like, each circumstance is going to be separate and individual and different. And that's the hard part to this big picture equation, It's not just going to be, the same old thing over and over. Everything will have a different circumstance, I believe.
What happens right now, Melissa, if somebody in that instance came before you and it was denied? Would they have to essentially take vacation time? Would they have to take other time if they didn't? Would they take a pay deduction?
Well,
claw back money?
They would, if we heard that they were over their extended time, they have the 24 hours and they have the 96. And then they'd say, okay, well, you need to take your comp time or your personal time. It wouldn't be denied. They wouldn't be no pay. They would take out of a different pool of time that has been granted them.
And if they didn't have that available, then there'd be a pay deduct?
Then be a no pay, so yeah.
Okay.
And I do want to clarify is that the current language says in consultation with the sheriff. So that takes what you're talking about as far as the sheriff knows his people, is he's going to tell the human resources director how he feels about it. It's in the contract that it works the way it's supposed to work. And it has, as Melissa said, it has worked the way that it is supposed to work.
Except, we had that meeting because I said he wasn't going to take a comp day or vacation when he had a pool of sick time. I wasn't going to make him do that when that pool was there.
Right, but it went to the board. It worked the way it's supposed to work. It went through you voiced your opinion on whether it should be or not, and that's what the contract says, is that in consultation with the sheriff. Melissa doesn't get to make that determination. It comes before the board.
So you guys must have voted on it. They must have voted on it.
Yes, retroactively, you received that. Yes, it worked the way that it's supposed to work.
Well, having negotiated 3 police contracts here and 2 up in Lamar's, first of all, I can't believe the wording's even in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because none of the contracts I ever negotiated, it was your sick time's your sick time. If it's your family or somebody else, it's still, you use your sick time. I don't like doing contract stuff on MOUs. Personally, I tried a couple times. The city would never let us do it, so because they always wanted you to open the contract and do an addendum. But I mean, I have no problem. I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place. I don't think it should have been there to begin with, but I didn't do the negotiating. So I'm not going to say anything.
But now that you're on the other side of the aisle, I mean, it's
I don't
to me
see it
it's
as
not as big a.
I don't see it as a benefit. I see the sick time as a benefit. And whether it's you, a child, 'cause I can tell you, I took 4.5 weeks off when my son was 5 and he got hit by a car. And they set his leg at such an angle that he couldn't walk, period. And I had to carry him everywhere. So I took 4.5 weeks of sick time. If Sioux City PD had had this policy, I couldn't have. But our policy was if you had the sick time, you use it. And so that's how I took it. That's why when this was first brought to my attention, I looked and I said, that wording's in there?
Okay. But it was bargained for.
Yeah, I know. That's why I said I also understand that I don't like doing contracts under MOUs. I think, and that's from this side. I think, because in this case, it'd be great for the employees to do it. I think contracts should be negotiated at contract negotiations time. That's when I think they should come up.
When would this be renegotiated?
I think this one's 2020, isn't it? No, they're up. This is this year.
Maybe I'm too green and too youthful for in comparison to the collective bargaining process, but are we suggesting that are on the collective bargaining table, we actually think that we're going to use as a bargaining chip, your elected official gets to sign off, and they say, what are we going to give for that? Really? To me, I think having the elected official, I think we're making a little bit of a mountain out of a molehill.
Yeah.
Having they make that determination, yes, he was hit by the car versus his son being hit by the car, he needs an extra day, still could be appealed to the board. We haven't given up all that oversight. I'm not sure that that will ever then make its way, if it's going to be a bargaining chip, to say, what are you willing to give up? Wages? Can we give up some wages in order to have your elected officials sign on? I think we're...
I would bet this would never be a chip. It'd just be...
It wouldn't, so it'll never happen if we see it as a benefit, I guess. But
I'll be honest, I don't see it as a benefit. I just see a better language.
Exactly. If we don't see it as a benefit, then we wouldn't necessarily trade.
To To me, the sick time's a benefit, not who's sick.
It is a benefit, though, because the union wants it.
But the union,
I'm going to let the union talk.
The union was not involved in this in the beginning. I'm Joe Bukovich, president of the union. This problem was brought up to the union after the meeting took place and said that the language is a problem. And it was suggested that cleaning up the language would really help. That's when we got involved. We didn't go searching for a benefit here. We were trying to help clearing up the language. We were brought in after the fact. Okay. First off. Second, the deputy's contract is up this fall for negotiation. The correctional officers have 3 more years. So this language wouldn't get cleared up for them for 3 more years. So that contract would still have this old language in it. So there is that issue there.
And that's not what we're talking about tonight.
Well, that question was brought up.
That is not what we're talking about tonight.
Pat, are you saying there's just one MOU before the board right now?
Yes.
So there'd have to be a separate MOU that would address the
That's
correctional officers if that was the wish.
And the auditor's office and the county attorney's office?
Absolutely, and I think that that's the parity, if you will, among elected officials, is that, because I had the early concern, why is the sheriff any different? We know you're different, but in the terms of, I mean that in all, in terms of any other elected official. So each one of these is talked about. Each one of these would need to come back, and it'd have to be like any other MOU. It'd have to be something that the bargaining unit would want, and if the bargaining unit didn't want, then they wouldn't sign off on it.
I would say that would have to happen so all of our employees are treated fairly.
Absolutely.
And the same.
Right. And I think that's important so that one doesn't feel like, well, I can appeal to the sheriff, but I can't appeal to the county attorney in my particular situation.
So I guess the corollary to that would be, is the 120-hour cap something that's in the general employment policy for non-union employees?
It is.
So is there any talk of a change in regards to that?
Well,
They can still appeal to the board of supervisors, correct?
So you're not going to change it for them?
Well, they don't, is there another elected official?
Could be.
well, would the
Like-
board of supervisor have a designee, and then you could, the department head would be your designee for that decision for the wage plan?
That could be a potential.
I guess
That was the wrench I was going to throw in. What about the employees that don't work for a elected official, like our secondary roads people? They don't work, so they'd have to come to the 5 of us instead of going to Mark Nara.
Right.
I mean, I think if we're talking about parity, it should be parity to all the employees.
Yeah, and
As a deputy, you know, law enforcement works different than, like the sheriff already said, we don't work the normal hours. And we're somewhat militaristic. So as a deputy, I can't imagine going around the sheriff to HR or to the board. Everything I'm doing is going to go up through my sergeant, my lieutenant, my major, to the sheriff before I go across the street to anybody. And all we were trying to do, from the confusion of the meeting that happened, from what I was informed, because we were not there, is clarify the language. We're not going for new benefit. We were trying to help out clarify the language for future incidents, because no matter what, life is life. It's happened once, it's going to happen again, this sort of situation. And we're trying to help find a solution. As law enforcement, we are going to go through our elected sheriff. Right now it's Dave Drew. We are going to go through him. We have to go through him. And we couldn't imagine not doing it. Our purpose here with the MOU was to clarify the language so there was less confusion in the future. That was our purpose here.
Was what happened, to Pat's point, where you, Dave, were in consultation with HR throughout the process of it being rectified or addressed? I mean, was that basically what you're talking about?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
They weren't involved in it because it hadn't become really a union issue. It was more, I was standing the gap there arguing the point of, there's this pool, let's get it. And so I'll be the first to tell you, I think it was me or I had somebody go tell you that you need to go get the language cleaned. And if I violated some rule, that I guess I'll live with it. I know I didn't hear, but I mean, I just felt that they should go clean that up with an MOU. I thought an MOU was simpler. That's where I'm at.
Well, obviously with each contract renegotiation, there's a list of clarifications that aren't really objected to.
Right. I mean, Anthony's here.
It's
Put him on the spot, but he's
Only for some unions now.
I think we have an attorney.
Well, the intention would be each one of these would follow, not.
Certainly, you can clear up all this at contract negotiation time. You could do it now as well. My practice has been each of these MOUs that comes up, we incorporate it into the contract at the next bargaining session. Because to your point, I don't like to have a contract and then think, oh wait, I got 12 MOUs that I have to go reference to see what changed. So my practice has been to always incorporate the MOUs into the contract at each session. So I think you could do it now. I think you could do it later. I think you could do nothing if that's what you want.
So if an MOU was passed, it would be incorporated into the next contract?
Assuming that everybody agreed that it should go in there, yes.
Just want to make one additional point that this issue had nothing to do with the language, that why it occurred. Had nothing to do with the language. Cleaning up the language doesn't do anything to how this occurred. It was an error that occurred because the supervisor did not know that that person had exceeded that time.
But he went.
So how is the supervisor going to know in the future so this doesn't happen again?
That's what I went to, and that's what I explained earlier, is we went to the IT department to have the time card system modified so that when that occurs, that situation occurs, is that the employee who put in for it is notified, and that supervisor is notified at that point that they are in, if they are granted that they are going to be in excess of that 120 hours. So the process did work the way it's supposed to work. It didn't have anything to do with the language. It had to do with an error of the way the program was written. And we are working to clarify that now.
I think as it reads right now, actually any request should come before you guys, as the contract reads now. So I think there probably is some clarification needed, because I'm guessing you guys don't want to hear from every employee that has a sick kid and needs to take a day off work. I mean, I think that's going to overwhelm you if we follow the strict contract language. So I think it needs some clarification. I'm not sure that, I wasn't involved in that situation, so I'm not sure that it would necessarily fix what happened, but that's sort of how it came up, and that's where the first underline that you see in the MOU is to address, any request for more than 120 hours. That's where that came from.
Michelle Scaff, Deputy Auditor. I just wanted to clarify the process that we go through and the notifications that we do as far as payroll goes. It's true that the supervisors don't know immediately when an employee exceeds 120 hours, but when the payroll is processed, we run a report, and that'll show us if that employee exceeds 120 hours. And it does happen. What we do from the payroll perspective is we then notify HR that it has happened. They get those reports also, and we also notify the supervisors who are authorized to make decisions based on payroll for the department that has happened in. And the procedure in the past that we have followed is that the employee is given the option to use comp time, personal days, or vacation. And so I think that's where part of the problem is that they are not given the option to use sick time if they've exceeded the 120 hours. But there is a process in place where the supervisors are notified and those changes are made before the payroll is processed to prevent that employee from exceeding the 120 hours. But what we're trying to accomplish right now to prevent this from happening before it goes to payroll is that we're going to put a block at the employee level when they reach 120 hours. And then based on what the decision of the board is on this matter, it's going to say for that employee to notify their supervisor that they've exceeded and to seek direction. So then that supervisor of the department will have to determine what's the next route to go. Does that employee have to use something? Do we need to go to the sheriff? Do we need to go to the board? Or what do we need to do at this point based on what the contracts say?
Thank you very much for that, Michelle. So, short of going before the Board of Supervisors, I'm an employee, I'm a deputy. I need to get on the agenda I need to go before the Board of Supervisors, but they have a decision to make, right? Is there any lag between, when I say streamline, Dave being able to say, go ahead and use your sick time because it's, these 8 hours in this 1 year, this 1 day, that's fine? Or is it only, we get the retroactive applicability, you didn't make the agenda, we're going to have to put you on for, 9 days from now? Do you see what I'm saying?
Well, what would happen is we'd have to make a decision when we're doing payroll of what's used. Based on what we have been making that decision on is based on what our procedures say and what past practice has been in doing this. So if there's a correction to be made, we can make that in the future, and that'll correct those accruals that are in the books. I mean, it's, unless that employee's exhausted their time and it involves them using all their time, we can correct that. That's just accruals that are on the books. They're still going to get paid for the rates. It's just which pool is that going to come out of.
So would it be retroactive applicability in those instances? I'll either lose pay, lose the vacation, or lose the comp time, but I'll find that out a week and a half, as long as the Board of Supervisors has weighed in eventually.
If there's something that's been contested that needs to be changed, yes. But I mean, in theory, if we're following the procedures and the practices and what's written in the contract, there shouldn't be that many errors that need to be corrected.
But to exceed it, I'll need to come before the Board of Supervisors for a vote.
That's what to use, yes, what time to use.
And that's the way it happened, and that's the way it worked, is retroactively. They made the appeal, and you granted it, and that person got it.
Yeah. Or it could have denied it and lost pay, or if that was the situation, if there were no other. Yes. So he'd be told, you took this, we made the best decision we knew at the time, we're going to have to deduct you a day, if that was the case.
Yes, and the correction would be made at that point when that decision was made.
To me, between the two options, I think it's clear, but and I know that would have been the case with the Sioux City PD, and we have this different language, but that's my position.
We would prefer that you went to PTO, so then we wouldn't have to deal with any of these issues.
So with that, I think there's been quite a robust discussion. I'd go ahead and move to approve the authorization for the chairman to sign the attached MOU. And ask for a second.
Second.
Motion by Taylor, second by Potabom. Finally put this horse down. Yes, sir.
I mean, I think whether or not the elected official confers with HR confers with the elected official, it gets handled. It does seem like it's an issue that needs to be cleared up through the contract process, and potentially with Melissa's recommendation, the HR handbook. But I have to agree with Pat that it's very easy to set precedent, and I don't know what this would do going forward. I mean, we even set some sort of minor precedent with our contribution to the Correctionville pool and their level of grant. We decided to give roughly half of what their grant was overall, today in Sloan, and so I don't know the consequences, and without hearing that there's 5 pending cases that need this action, I think we're obviously committed to working things out as we already did, and that as the board allowed, so I'll vote against it.
Mr. Heisel, can you be brief?
Yes, I can. Dan Heisel, Conservation Director. We had the same issue. I know this is what the sheriff's contract, it's a union contract, but the way it's stated in the HR handbook, I had an employee, had a sick kid, same thing. Had to choose vacation, personal days, couldn't use the other sick leave. So I just want you to take that into consideration when you look at this for the sheriff contracts, that you look at the other employees, that I got officers out there too that he had to choose personal days, vacation days to take care of a sick kid instead of using that $640.
And my assumption is that a lot of people don't. You say it doesn't happen all the time. There's a chilling effect. Do I want to come before the Board of Supervisors 9 days from now and find out find out I lost my day's worth of pay, or do I just not? I think that's probably more likely than what happens.
In our case, we followed the HR handbook.
So what is your solution then?
If you do it for the contracts for the sheriff, you should do it for all the employees.
And what do you do in the handbook? What's it state?
I'll let you, because I don't have that answer. I wasn't planning on this, and I sat in on this, and I'm thinking, oh boy, we had the same thing happen.
Well, the handbook pretty much states exactly what the contracts do. It says the Board of Supervisors or their designee can decide how to proceed if they go over. If the person comes and actually asks and says, okay, can I get more time? Can I do this? So.
But in that manual, the way it is then all those folks will still have to come to the Board of Supervisors unless you're changing that manual, and that's what I'm asking. If you're going to give it to the Human Resources Director to make that determination, or the chairperson to make that determination, but you are creating a separate set of standards for those employees that aren't under an elected official.
Well, collectively, they're under this elected official as a body.
Right.
Versus an auditor.
That's what you're talking about, the chilling effect of having to come before the board, is that all those employees who aren't under an elected official will have to come to the board in order to get that, to make that determination. And so you're treating them differently.
Unless the designee is the
or the chairperson.
Right. In which case, maybe there would be more parity.
I guess the point, to Pat's point, we're creating new language that creates new problems, where problems in the existing language have been dealt with moving forward. Have they not?
To argue that, Keith, was Dan followed the policy, and I said, I know this is not a shocker, I said no, we're not, because he had this pool of sick time, and he deserved to get the money out of there. But as that policy said, I probably should have told him a comp day, a vacation day, or what's the other day? I don't know. Is there a holiday? Personal day. And I said no. So that, I guess that's because maybe I'm elected. I fight a lot, but that was worth fighting for, I thought.
Right. But the point is, you're making the point, Dave, is you're treating those employees differently.
Well, they're my employees.
Well, I understand that. We've never had it. We've always had that issue.
All other 442 employees I care about Mike, but I really care about Mike.
Right.
So my pool is only in that's my rodeo right there.
Right, and that's
all I care about.
And that's the concern, is that you're treating your employees are being treated differently than Dan's employees, because you talked about the chilling effect of having to come before the board. Well, somebody did. But in order for that to occur, then it has to be
bad language in there. And I've said that at that meeting.
What I said before, I'm not real sure if the conservation gentleman had any sick time left. So every circumstance and every situation is different. It could be just 8 hours, or maybe they want, as you mentioned, a month to take care of somebody. That's when you go to the federal law and you go to FMLA, and it gets more more confusing as you get into it. So.
Well, I'm almost starting to lean towards, let this be a contract issue at negotiation time. I mean, I don't foresee that this will be killed at negotiation time. I don't foresee it, but.
Chris Garthright, working with the union. So because our department recognized that this is a language issue and it's a problem, we've come to you guys to rectify it. We're not saying just do it for us and don't do it for anybody else. By no means. It's obviously an issue that's affecting several departments. So in essence, let's fix it for everyone, or change something and do something different. So we're addressing the issue instead of just sitting and not doing anything about it. just looking at it. That's all we're, there's an issue, we want it talked about, and come up with different options.
I will say I'm not opposed to this, to Mr. Young's point, but I'm beginning to think this should be something that should be taken care of at each and every contract. I mean, I don't,
But can you put it in the policy, change the policy of what it says, and assign a designee for each department?
well, I believe we have a designee for, for our designee would be Melissa, correct?
Is this something we can bring up in the department head meetings and see how each department heads view this policy and make sure everybody's on the same page?
Well, is the union involved in the department head meetings? I mean, it wouldn't be a negotiation at that point, but no,
No, just information.
Can I ask another dumb question, Melissa? Yep. The decision to grant or deny this leave is in the sole discretion of the Board of Supervisors or its designee. Is that essentially the policy language of the handbook?
That is the handbook.
So does it need to come before the Board of Supervisors if the Board of Supervisors designates either the chairperson of the Board of Supervisors or the HR director to make that decision?
Correct.
So what I'm understanding is that the board could say, the HR director, or the department head, or the elected official can make that decision. And we put caveat language that if there's something egregious, it could come back before the board and anybody can appeal that. To me, waiting 6, 7, 9 days and finding out a decision doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense, but that's just me. And I think there's a way to treat everybody equally. Tonight, you have one contract before you. It was kind of the beta testing. I don't know if that's the term we used. We've had a good and healthy discussion. I think we're making a little much more to do about it. I don't think it'll ever be brought up during the contracts. If you wait 3 years to do it, it won't happen. So everybody can vote obviously your conscience tonight. But
Do we have any further comments?
One really briefly, if I may.
Sure.
Anthony Lamb, Class Law Firm. The only other thought I've had as we're sitting here is that there might be some value in having one person to make the decision for everybody so everybody's treated the same, or having the appeal process that we built in there. But, to the extent it trickles over into FMLA and some of these other issues, there may be some value in having one person who understands all those issues to make the decision, if that's what you're so inclined to do.
And your person would be?
I think that given the implications on FMLA and all the other potential impact that you have, the HR director is probably the obvious choice if you don't want to cede the control to the department heads and the elected officials.
that's what I was going to ask you. Are we just talking about the box that falls under the Board of Supervisors, one person rather than department heads, versus elected officials and the board's one designee?
I think consistency is key. If you're going to start ceding control to elected officials, and I think you probably need to farm it out to department heads and have some consistency in the application. If you're not, then I think you could just select Melissa or some other designee, the chair, if you so choose.
With an appeal to the board if they're not agreed with what the HR person.
As written, the appeal is built in there that if somebody doesn't like the decision, they can come to you guys.
As this is written.
As this is written.
Yeah, and as I understand,
not as it is right now.
Actually, it doesn't.
Clearly, the person appealed before, and we did.
The language, any leave request which is going to be denied by the designee of the board shall be presented to the Board of Supervisors, and the employee may present his or her situation.
So it's automatic.
It has an appeal process built into it currently without any changes.
If it is denied, it's automatic. It comes to the board.
Right now, you aren't granting or denying that on your own. Is that right?
It really hasn't come up for me besides the last time, which then eventually went in front of the board.
So one time in 6 years.
The only time. I will say that, yes, I agree with that, but as Michelle mentioned, the process, the audit, the auditor's process, they get the report, it goes over, they contact, and then they change the 2 hours to the correct pool. So it's not even been an option for people, I guess. They always just say, okay, take it on my vacation or my personal day or.
But you've never been granting or denying on your own without coming before the board, correct?
I did that one time.
Okay.
And then to make it all more cohesive, we decided to take it in front of the board as well, so.
So we're really not following the grant or deny by the designee and then appeal. Typically, it's, you've got to come before the Board of Supervisors. Okay. I think there's a motion and a second on the table. I'd ask for a record vote.
Should we do a roll call or?
Can we get a roll call vote, Mr. Gill?
Radig.
No.
Potabom.
Aye.
Taylor.
Aye.
Ung.
Nay.
DeWitt.
Aye. Item 13, secondary roads.
First item I have for the board is to authorize the chair to sign the farm lease for the Brees property. This is to allow Josh Alber's rental of 41 acres.
I would move that.
I will second that. Motion by Mr. Radig. Any further questions or comments? All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Consider approval of Iowa DOT budget amendment for FY 2018.
Just as Dennis brought you the budget amendment for the county, for that to be effective for the secondary road department, we also have to run those numbers through the Department of Transportation. So the numbers that you approved for Dennis today for the secondary road department amendment also apply to this Iowa DOT amendment. I recommend approval of amendment number 1 for the Woodbury County Secondary Road Department budget.
I move it.
I will second the motion by Mr. Taylor. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Item C, consider resolution to set road vacation hearing date for June 5th.
Finally, in section 2 of Arlington Township in Woodbury County, we have a county line road and a short stub of unimproved dirt road that extends down into Woodbury County. Residents in Plymouth County have requested that road be closed. It has very high banks. They can't keep their fences or their cattle in. The road is serving very little purpose, has minimal traffic on it. The neighbors were contacted about 2 years ago to see whether they had any objections to the closure. One of our residents, Dee Pratt, she and her father Ben own the farm property that's involved in Woodbury County. We had some access issues. Currently they cross a 3-ton bridge to get to their farm. That 3-ton bridge doesn't let them get their crop out legally. We were able to address their concerns by citing them a new driveway on Highway 140, Iowa Highway 140, that will serve them better than what our current road does. What we're looking for today is approval of the motion to set the public hearing. Since Plymouth County, this is their maintenance mile, and since they're initiating this action, the hearing will be set in Plymouth County. It would be nice if one of the board members could attend with me to, just hear whatever objections there might be at that hearing. And it'll be on the 5th of June. Let me see what time. At 10 a.m. in the Board of Supervisors room in the Plymouth County Courthouse. I can bring back their comments if none of you would happen to be available, but it would be nice if one of you could attend as well. But I recommend that we proceed with the hearing. The advantage with this also for Woodbury County is that little 3-ton bridge will be closed and vacated as part of this That saves us the cost of a short span bridge replacement, which with the current prices you've all seen could be anywhere between $150,000 and $250,000. So we have addressed the landowners' access issues for both the Woodbury County landowners. Plymouth County landowners and those in Woodbury have agreed to the conditions. There'll be a public hearing. There may be more discussion of some of those conditions, but at this point I think it's worth proceeding with a hearing and recommend that we join Plymouth County in setting a road closure hearing.
I move to consider resolution to set road vacation hearing date for June 5th.
I'll second that.
Second by Mr. Radig.
Maybe you should fully raise our left hand if you can't go.
And I nominate Mr. Taylor to be there.
I've been up in Plymouth County a lot lately. Appreciate it.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carries 5-0. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. We're on a tight timetable with this, so I need to get
it would be difficult for me to go. Anybody else?
Again, I can bring back any comments as well because I will attend the hearing that morning. So.
Reports on committee meetings.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Rocky and I attended the HSI meeting at Siouxland District Health for about an hour on mental health services and the way forward. Thought it was very good. They asked about the June 1st, and I mentioned that we had someone for the Native American detox, so they were appreciative of that and thought it was a good meeting. The more I think that we're getting out to let people know kind of the story behind the story, I think the better. So thank you very much.
Any others? Do we have any citizen concerns?
David Gleiser, Community Economic Development Director. Supervisors, I want to take this time as a unique opportunity to have Brian Smith from Beacon Schneiders just show you what online permitting could look like. He's actually traveling on his way to Mankato this evening, and sometime in the future I would like to submit a formal agenda item for some discussion on Woodbury County potentially utilizing Beacon, who is our vendor for GIS software for property and real estate in Woodbury County. And there are some functionalities that we currently do not utilize, but after having a presentation that Mark, Nara, and Julie Connolly have been a part of, I just want to take this opportunity to, while he's in town and sat through your board meeting, to use 3 minutes up of just showing you what it will look like. And again, I'm not asking for any discussion or anything like that, but I just want him to give you a snapshot of what it looks like, because unfortunately, when I do plan to submit a formal agenda item, he's not going to have the ability to come here and give this information. So with that being said, Brian Smith.
Thank you for your patience.
Good evening, Chairman DeWitt. Please keep me to 3 minutes, sir. For everyone. Okay, my name is Ryan Smith. I'm with the Schneider Corporation. And you guys probably know us through the Beacon website. I'm sure you've used it one time or another. We also have another tool that is permitting. And it came about from demands from some of our current clients. Because what's happening is people were going to the Beacon website to access information they needed for the permit. So I'm giving you an extremely shortened version of this. So here's the rundown of some of the highlights. It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So think of it from a contractor point of view. You're able to manage all of your permits and all of your workflows without having to set foot in the courthouse until maybe the final approval or whatever needs to be done at the end. Everything's automated, emails, internally and externally. The communication's much quicker and everything is tracked. Because you have Beacon, it integrates with that, also with all the mapping and everything else, so your CAMA, your tax, and everything else. But this is where it really started to grow. It was a couple years ago. Marion County was the one who approached us. They already had permitting, they had Beacon. They said, why don't we just put a button on Beacon to apply for? So now I believe they said permits on the website actually tripled. So I always think of it as, I'm 35 years old, what's the first thing I'm going to do for a permit? I'm going to go to the website, I'm going to do my research before I even set foot in a courthouse or speak to anyone on the phone. So you hit apply for permit, it asks you what kind, then it takes you automatically to the permitting site. It gives you the different choices of different types of permits. And then, so here's the key here, I really want to point this screenshot out here. Notice those little red dots here, those are beacon logos. It automatically puts all the correct information into the permit for you. So it pulls all that information from Beacon. So if you know your street address, 123 Main Street, it automatically puts all that information in there for you. I don't know my legal description. I don't know if you guys do either, but the Beacon website does. And then here's the GIS. I want to point out, if there's any engineers or surveyors in the room, it's not survey grade. It's not intended to be. It's more to draw a picture of what the person's trying to do. And then here it just shows different drop-down options. And if you notice there at the bottom, also has installers' names, so you can have them choose from a pre-approved list. And then also too, you can manage and also pay for multiple permits at the same time. And then there's email notifications. So once I apply for a permit on a Sunday night or on a Tuesday night, I'll get an automatic email notification. Everything's time-stamped. Here's just a bunch of just an ongoing list that we've started. I probably need to add fireworks, I guess, more recently. And then that is it. Did I keep it under 3 minutes?
You're the only one.
What's it cost? In fact, we have an award for you.
Yes, sir.
What's it cost?
There's some setup costs initially, $3,000, and then there's also connecting to a third-party payment system, which is also a one-time setup, and then the annual hosting is $8,100 a year. And I do want to stress it's not limited to permits, but that's the initial drive to get the program.
So that annual hosting's on top of the hosting already?
On top of Beacon?
Yeah.
Yes, it's completely two separate products. It would be, like Microsoft Word versus Microsoft Excel. They work together, but they're separate products.
Do we get a discount for like a package deal?
I've asked for one twice.
We've been, David and I have been talking about this for I presented this at the COZO, it's called COZO, the Planning and Zoning meeting for Iowa. It was in Davenport, Iowa about a year ago. And that's where we kind of sparked the conversation. And he's seen a couple online demos, and I did an on-site demo probably about a month ago, and involved more people that were in the room.
How long would that 8,100 last? Is it a 3-year contract?
The standard contract is usually 3 years. If the county so chooses to do more or less, it's always negotiable.
How many permits do we get in a year's time, roughly?
On average, about 100 building permits. About on average, and percentage of those are ag exempt, and so we wouldn't retain a fee because the ag exemption, they're exempt from.
Do you know where our permitting fees go to right now, or does it just go back in the general fund?
I believe that they're going back to rural basic or general basic, and Dennis explained, I think, that they're being used to help buy down the levy.
Can we capture those and then just pay for this?
Well, conservation is set up similar where all the fees generated from that department go back into that department's operating budget. So that's something that the board can consider to do. At least, it would be nice to at least have that maintenance fee recouped through that, to set aside. And then the rest, if we wanted to go back to help buy down the levy, that's...
I should point out it's the same price whether you have 1 or 50 different workflows. It's the same hosting cost.
And then when were we going to see this again? Because I think overall, I know it's an initial blush, but it seems like a no-brainer to have an online system.
I really want to get this back in front of the board sometime in June so we could ask for a July 1 contract.
Tonight, if you want.
7 or $8,000 a year will do.
So in addition to the online functionality and the convenience and just sort of getting up with the times, one of the main benefits that I see personally from, a department standpoint is that it's a database. So all of the information is going to be, on the back end, we can go in and search for a permit by, name, address, rather than going through a filing system, which is what we currently have right now.
Do you have to sign a 1 or a 3-year contract to stand it up?
Our standard contracts with most clients is 3 years. Like I said, everything is negotiable.
Because I guess my only thing would be if you have 100 of these and only 9 actually use this, but not
No,
others,
so
would this be the only thing that you'd accept?
What I intend to do is that any paper permit that we receive, that we will manually enter that into the Beacon for that database purpose. And part of the setup fee that Ryan mentioned is that we're actually going to be able to upload all of our existing permit data, which is currently maintained on an Excel spreadsheet.
So think of it this way. You're a contractor or you're a potential home buyer. You're going to go to the Beacon website. You're going to look at some information. You're going to have also now a hyperlink that says previous permits or anything that was ever permitted on that property at a click of a button. Right now, I don't want to speak for you, but I mean, right now you have to call in, you have to go down to the office, and you have to have someone dig through a bunch of filing cabinets.
I think we actually already have previous permits pulled, because I know on my own property, I can see that I pulled out a building permit.
On the summary page on Beacon, you can see that a permit was applied for, that a permit was received, but you're not actually able to pull it up and view it. And so for purposes of, just effectiveness, I think it's the real benefits from the database aspect.
And if I start the application process, and let's say I drop off halfway through, David still receives a notification that someone at least has started it. That gives David the opportunity to contact the citizen and ask, hey, do you need help? Or it could be just, no, I didn't have my credit card at the time, I couldn't pay. So it provides, I don't want to say leads, it's probably the wrong word, but it provides opportunity for them to communicate.
So that way, I think there's opportunity for this to help us catch permits that may have not been otherwise completed. Someone might say, oh, I didn't know that I had to fill out a permit. I think that it improves the accuracy of information because it's going to auto-populate, and functionality in terms of I would say floodplain development permit or a grading permit, working with the contractors. They can set up their user account, and once that's done, it's just a couple of clicks from the drop-down menu in terms of what sort of project they're working and clicking on the address. And we're going to be able, I'm working with the treasurer's office to get the credit card payment system. This will be able to take online payments as well. So if we're working with an engineering company from out of town or out of state, whether instead of now waiting for a check in the mail, we'll be able to just accept payment right over the phone or online. So
You have a question in the back there?
Or the...
You'll have to come up and...
You start 6 minutes.
Okay, I'll make it quick. Carter Smith, Sioux City. For the counties that have adopted this platform, in general, do they see an increase in the number of permits that are filed? Have they tracked that data? Like compared to previous history?
Permits usually are related to growth. Is that a fair assessment? If there's more building. But what I will say is a lot of clients have stated that actually through assessors is that they're finding less items that are going unaccounted for when they're going to inspect a property. They're finding some of those buildings that a person frankly maybe just didn't know that they had to apply for something. If they're building a new shed, maybe they didn't realize that they had to go and apply for it. Providing that simple click of a link by going to planning and zoning, apply for permit here, 2 clicks, Me as a citizen, it makes it really easy to just do a couple clicks and at least start the process. So I guess what I'm saying is it's helping cleaning up items. But getting back to what I was saying, I don't know if you guys can help me out with that, but I usually see permits going up and down related to how much people are building things. Is that fair? So I guess ask me in 2009 or ask me in 2018.
And it's part of my formal agenda items, kind of in the very near future. I'll bring some of that trend data that will show types of permits that have been applied for and fees, and we're doing some analysis on surrounding counties and what their fee structures look like and those sort of things. So,
let me just add to that. If I'm a contractor and I'm working on 15 different sites, I'm more likely to fill out 15 permits versus going back and forth from the job site, back and forth, and I'm able to manage them at night. Okay, I'm done, I promise.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other citizen concerns? Do you have any board concerns? We are adjourned.